A brief history of vaccine. For centuries, a brief history a brief history of vaccines. For centuries, humans have looked for ways to protect each other against deadly diseases. For experiment and taking chances to a global vaccine rollout in the midst of an unprecedented pandemic. Immunization has a long history. Vaccine research can raise challenging ethical questions, and some of the experiments carried out for development of vaccine in the past would not be ethically accepted today. Vaccines have saved more human lives than any other medical invention in history. Scroll on to take a journey through the last millennium to see how these extraordinary discoveries and achievements have changed our lives. From 1040s to 1700s, from the last 5th century, people in different parts of the world have attempted to prevent illness by intentionally exposing healthy people to smallpox, a practice known as variolation, after a name for smallpox, la variola. Some sources suggest these battles were taking place as early as 200 BCE. From at least the 15th century. From at least the 15th century, people in different parts of the world attempt to prevent illness by intentionally exposing healthy people to smallpox. In 1721, Lady Mary Wortley Montagu brought smallpox inoculation to Europe by asking that her two daughters be inoculated against smallpox as she had observed practice in Turkey. In 1774, Benjamin Jesse makes a breakthrough testing his hypothesis that infection with cowpox, a bovine virus which can spread to humans, could protect a person from smallpox. In 1796, Dr. Edward Jenner created the world's first successful vaccine. He found out that people infected with cowpox were immune to smallpox. In May, in 1796, English physician Edward Jenner expanded on his discovery and inoculated 8-year-old James Philip with matter collected from cowpox sour on the hand of milkmaid. Despite suffering a local reaction and feeling unwell for several days, Phipps made a full recovery. 2 months later, in July 1796, Jenner inoculated Phipps with a matter from human smallpox sour in order to test Phipps' resistance. Phipps remained in perfect health and became the first human to be vaccinated against smallpox. The term vaccine is later coined, taken from the Latin word for cow, vacca. Read more about the history of smallpox vaccination. We can. French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte and American President Thomas Jefferson acknowledged Dr. Edward Jenner's work and endorsed the smallpox vaccine. In 1800s, in 1800s, in 1872, despite enduring a stroke and the death of two of his daughters to typhoid, Louis Pasteur created the first laboratory produced vaccine. The first laboratory produced the vaccine for fowl cholera in chicken. In 1885, Louis Pasteur successfully prevented rabies through post-exposure vaccinations, a treatment of controversial. Pasteur has unsuccessfully attempted to use the vaccine on humans twice before, and injecting a human with a disease agent is still a new and uncertain method. Louis Pasteur In 1885, Louis Pasteur successfully prevented rabies through post-exposure vaccination. But Pasteur is not a medical doctor, but despite the risk, he began a course of 13 injections with patient Joseph Moister, each containing a stronger dose of rabies virus. Moister survived and later became the caretaker of Pasteur tomb in Paris. In 1894, Dr. Anna Wessels William isolated a strain of diphtheria bacteria that is crucial in the development of an antitoxin for the disease. In 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic killed 1 in 67 United States soldiers, making an influenza vaccine a U.S. military priority. In 1900, the Spanish flu pandemic from 1918 and 1919, the Spanish flu pandemic kills an estimated 20 to 50 million people worldwide, including 1 in 67 United States soldiers, making an influenza vaccine a U.S. military priority. Each experiment with influenza vaccine are carried out. The U.S. Army Medical School test 2 million doses in 1918, but results are inconclusive. In 1937, Max Taylor, Hugh Smith, and Eugene Hagan developed the 17D vaccine against yellow fever. The vaccine is approved in 1938 and over 1 million people have received it that year. Taylor goes on to be awarded the Nobel Prize in 1939. Bacteriologists Beryl Kendrick and Grace Eldering demonstrate the efficacy of batriosis whooping cough vaccine. The scientists show that vaccination reduces the rate at which children get sick from 15 per 100 children to 2.3 per 100. By 1945, the first influenza vaccine is approved for military use, followed in 1946 by an approval for civilian use. The research is led by doctors Thomas Francis Cher and Jonas Salk. Who both go on to be closely associated with the polio vaccine. From 1952 to 1955, the first effective polio vaccine is developed by Jonas Salk, and trial began. Salk tested the vaccine on himself and his family the following year, and mass trial involved over 1.3 million children take place in 1954. By 1960, a second type of polio vaccine developed by Albert Sabin is approved for use. Sabin vaccine was live attenuated using the virus in weakened form and could be given orally as drops or on sugar cube. The oral polio vaccine was first tested and produced in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. Czechoslovakia became the first country in the world to eliminate polio. In 1967, mass vaccination began with the World Health Organization announcing the intensified smallpox eradication program. In 1967, the World Organization announced the Intensified Smallpox Eradication Program, which aims to eradicate smallpox in more than 30 countries through surveillance and vaccination. Eradication means more than the elimination of disease in a single area. WHO defined it as a permanent reduction to zero of specific pathogen as a result of deliberate effort with no more risk of reintroduction. Smallpox has been mostly eliminated in Western Europe, North America, and Japan by this time. Following the announcements, there is unprecedented global solidarity. Despite the ongoing Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union are united in support in the program. In 1969, 4 years after Dr. Blomberg discovered the hepatitis B virus, he worked with microbiologist Evelyn Millman to develop the first hepatitis B vaccine using the heat treated from the virus. A plasma-derived inactivated vaccine is approved for commercial use from 1981 to 1990, and the genetically engineered DNA recombinant vaccine developed in 1986 is still in use today. In 1971, the measles vaccine in 1963 is combined with the recently developed vaccine against mumps in 1967 and rubella in 1969 into a single vaccination, MMR. In 1971, the measles vaccine in 1963 is combined with the recently developed vaccine against mumps and rubella into a single vaccine, MMR, by Dr. Maurice Hilleman. In 1974, the expanded program on immunization, now the essential program on immunization, is established by WHO to develop immunization programs throughout the world. The first disease targeted by EBR are diphtheria, measles, polio, tetanus, tuberculosis, and whooping cough. In 1978, a polysaccharide vaccine that protects against 14 different strains of pneumococcal pneumonia is licensed, and in 1983 it's expanded to protect against 23 strains. In 1980, the World Health Assembly, acting on recommendation from the WHO Global Commission for the Certification of Smallpox Eradication, declares smallpox eradicated. The world and all its people have won freedom from smallpox, which was the most devastating disease sweeping in endemic through many countries since earliest time, leaving this blindness and disfigurement in its wake. From in 1970 to 1980 in USA, whooping cough cases hit an all-time low in 1966, but the success of babesiosis vaccine is hampered by a decline in uptake with so few whooping cough cases. Fear about rare but serious side effects of the wholesale vaccine start to outweigh fears of disease itself. In 1985, the first vaccine against disease caused by Haemophilus influenzae type B, HIV, is licensed after David Smith found a company to produce it. Smith and Porter and W. Anderson had been working together on a vaccination since 1968. In 1988, WHO launched the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. In 1988, following the eradication of smallpox, WHO set its sight on poliomyelitis, launching a global polio eradication initiative in the late 1980s. Polio is endemic in 125 countries, and the initiative aimed to achieve its eradication by the year 2000. By 1994, polio is eradicated from the Americas, followed by Europe in 2002, and by 2003, the disease is endemic in just 6 countries. The effort continued. In 1995, Leeds Schwarzkowski leads a team who outlined the role of human papillomavirus (HPV) in cervical cancer detecting and in screening, and the researcher began work on HPV vaccine. HPV vaccine are very common, often with minimal symptoms, but high-risk HPV strain can go on to cause other medical conditions, particularly cervical cancer. Schwarzkowski goes on to be principal investigator in the development of bivalent HPV vaccine. In 1999, the first vaccine against rotavirus, the most common cause of severe diarrhea in young children, is withdrawn only a year after it was approved due to a concern about the risk of intestinal problem. A lower risk version of the vaccine is introduced in 2006. It takes until 2019 for it to be in use in over 100 countries. In 2006, the first vaccine for human papilloma virus is approved. HPV vaccination goes on to become a key part of the effort to eliminate cervical cancer. 2016, the success of meningitis vaccine project highlights the key role public-private partnership can play in helping to develop vaccine. Success of the meningitis vaccine project highlights the key role public-private partnership can play in helping to develop vaccine. In its first years of use, the vaccine has nearly eliminated Group A meningococcal disease in meningitis belt countries of Africa, and it's now being integrated into routine national immunization programs. The World Health Assessment become the RD Blueprint global strategy and preparedness plan that allows the rapid activation of research and development activity during epidemics. In 2019, malaria vaccine pilot implementation is launched in Ghana, Malawi, and Kenya. And RTS vaccine is the first vaccine that can significantly reduce the deadliest and most prevalent strain of malaria in younger children, the group at high risk of dying from the disease. WHO pre-qualifies an Ebola vaccine for use in countries at high risk as a part of broad set of tools in response to the disease. In 2021, a global vaccine stockpile is established to ensure outbreak response. A third generation smallpox vaccine is approved for prevention of monkeypox, thus became the first monkeypox vaccine. In January 2020, Director General declared the outbreak of novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 to be a public health emergency of international concern. On 11 March, WHO confirmed that COVID-19 is a pandemic. Effective COVID-19 vaccines are developed, produced, and distributed with unprecedented speed, some using new mRNA technology. In December 2020, just 1 year after the first case of COVID-19 was detected, the first COVID-19 vaccine are administered. In 2021, the COVID-19 vaccine rollout continued with those delivered and administered across continent, but efforts to curb the pandemic are threatened by inequalities in vaccine coverage. As of July 2021, almost 85% of vaccines have been administered in high and upper middle income countries, and over 75% have been administered in only 10 countries alone. WHO called on member states to prioritize vaccination of health workers and at-risk groups in low-income countries in order to stop severe disease and death, keep health workers safe, and societies and economies. For over 2 centuries, people have been vaccinated against deadly disease ever since the world's first vaccine was developed against smallpox. History has launched us that a full and effective global response to vaccine preventable disease takes time, financial support, and collaboration, and require continual vigilance. From group-breaking practice in 1500 to the new technology used in COVID-19 vaccine, we have come a long way. Vaccine now help protect against more than 20 diseases, for pneumonia to cervical cancer and Ebola. In just the last 30 years, child deaths have declined by above 50%, thanks in large part to vaccine, but more must be done. In many parts of the world, 1 in 5 children still goes unvaccinated. The coming decade will need global cooperation, funding, commitment, and vision to ensure that no child or adult suffers on or dies from a vaccine preventable disease.